Welcome back to the WSU Democrats Podcast. Today we have a very special episode for you. Our guest needs no introduction, but I'll allow him to introduce himself anyway.
I'm Kevin Lundell from the Ogden City Council.
Awesome. And we're also joined by...
I'm Vice President Vaughan.
I'm president of Weber State's Human Rights Club. My name's Macy.
Awesome. So I just kind of wanted to start with somewhat of the elephant in the room. At first I was going to do like a little explainer about this, but I think you probably have so much more context than we do on why the proposal concerning ICE, clarifying the position that Ogden City will not cooperate with ICE, why that proposal was dropped or withdrawn. I've seen different reporting that it was withdrawn for the purpose of prioritizing something else. I saw something else that said it was dropped because there was concerns it violated state law, things like that. I don't know. What can you tell us about that?
Perfect. Thank you for letting me be here today and for inviting me on and an opportunity to chat with y'all and an opportunity to explain that actually, because it was quite the process. It really was. I mean, from the time I kind of announced it in council meeting, in what was a response to an outpouring from our community coming out and saying, hey, what are we going to do about ICE? And frankly, it was also a response to our Weber County Sheriff and his Facebook post, which was quite lengthy, but there were a couple of different comments in there. One was a full stop sentence that said, we support ICE. And my experience with Ogden is that we do not. And also he said, federal immigration officers are not a threat to our community. And I think that if you believe that, your idea of community is quite small. And so from there, we just felt like we needed to do something. What we really wanted to do was take the mayor and the chief of police's words and formalize them into a resolution. They had said that they wouldn't collaborate with ICE, that they wouldn't sign a 287G agreement. And we wanted to formalize that. And we also wanted to get on the record that they wouldn't use any city property for collaborating with ICE as well. And so we took that and wanted to get it in the form of a resolution that would help formalize that. We knew all along that wouldn't be a binding form of a law, but we felt like getting it on the record and having people put their names and their signatures to it would make a difference. And so that's why we started down that road. Do you have any questions up to that point?
I don't have any questions, but what I will say is, like, for people who would say that, oh, what they were trying to do was just symbolic, arguably. I mean, what you could do, you look at, for example, Nate Bluen's bill in the state legislature, how he tried to do the ICE out bill, where it stopped ICE from going into sensitive locations and things like that. And he knew it was going to fail, and he did it anyway. And someone at a tabling event was like, oh, that's so performative. He knew that wasn't going to pass. But he's doing what his constituents told him to do, which is to propose a bill that said that. And it also shows that if he is proposing the bill, even if it got killed, you know, who are the Republicans that killed it? They're now on the record, and now they're going to be fighting for re-election. And also it shows that if we elect more Democrats or more progressive candidates like them, they will do more things like this. So I think it's important what you're trying to do, but it sounds like it wasn't just to be symbolic. Did you think it was actually going to pass in the beginning, and then eventually it just kind of the understanding was this might violate state law? Or
yeah, we had a lot of hope, right? We had a lot of hope that it would pass, that we would get the rest of the council and the mayor on board with this. And to your point, it was more than symbolic. I mean, it did help start a conversation and galvanized our community. And I think, at least in a small way, there are people in our community doing work, ICE Watch, mutual aid, things like that may not have gotten involved if we hadn't have pushed this to the forefront of our community and gotten it in council meetings and had discussions about it. So I'm proud of that, and that we helped aid that process along. But what ended up happening is, we went to work. We went to work to try to get this resolution going, get the language down. We had community meetings. I spoke with a commission member. So in Helena, Montana, they have, instead of a council, it's called a commission. And they had this outpouring from their community. And I spoke with a commission member from Helena, Montana, And she said, the political, the amount of pressure that was coming from the community, just they wanted a resolution like this. And so they ended up passing theirs. And I talked to her about it and was helping, she was helping me coordinate some of the things we were doing. And then about a week later, she called me back. She said, "Hey, Kevin, have you seen the news?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Well, the attorney general and the governor are coming after us because they believe that we've violated state law." And she's like, "I don't think we have, but they're coming after us. They think that a lot of the reason was because after Helena passed theirs, there was 3 other cities that were looking to pass something similar, and the attorney general and the Republican governor there, they wanted to put a stop to it. So they started investigating them and coming after them." Well, after I heard that, I was like, well, I'm going to personally dig a little deeper, And so I started digging a little deeper, and I came across this obscure state statute. I, immediately called our council staff, and they were like, "Hey, you know what? This is a resolution. It's non-binding. I think it's probably going to be okay." Right. And I'll forward it on to the city attorney. The city attorney didn't get back to us for quite a long time. In fact, the first time I heard the city's legal explanation of that this might violate state code or their legal position was through a KSL article that I was quoting from the mayor. And so I didn't have an opportunity to actually speak with the attorney until I had heard that position. But as we looked into it, I spoke with other attorneys as well, and they were like, "Yeah, this is a weird law. It really is just the strangest law." And what it comes down to, I'll try to make this brief, but this law basically states that a city can't, by policy, direct their police department on how they interact with federal immigration officers. So the chief of police can himself say yes or no, that I will collaborate or not with federal immigration. But neither the mayor nor the council can, by policy, do that. Now, that is a bad law, right? Like, to have a chief of police and have a law written that you can't have oversight over him when it comes to this part of policing is a super rare and just really obscure kind of law. And a bunch of that law was actually struck down in court. This part narrowly held. And as we looked over it, we're like, we couldn't figure out a way to get around that. And after much discussion, that's when we decided to withdraw the bill. We decided to do that officially in a work session because we still wanted to have the conversation around it. So that's how that process went about.
I have 2 questions, actually. The first one was about what you just said with the law surrounding policing. How does that work in terms of sheriff offices or other elected roles within policing? Is it different, or do they not deal with federal immigration enforcement? How does that work with an elected role?
Great question. The sheriff is a different sort of animal because, like you said, he's an elected official, and the county commissioners don't have as much oversight over him. They have oversight in terms of the budget and things like that. But the sheriff is in the same situation and he obviously made a different choice and decided to collaborate, decided to sign that 287G agreement. The task force model, which is one of the highest models that you can sign, or that allows a sheriff to actually engage in immigration enforcement.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was also curious about something that you kind of said earlier in the terms of the community coming together. When I reached out to another individual on this resolution, when we were doing our ICE protest, our coordinated ICE protest for Weber, one of the things we wanted to do was have an actual demand that we were releasing out. And so I wanted to find a piece of policy that we could either stand for or against for our protest. So it wasn't just nothing. And I came across the resolution, and when I reached out to a council member about it, it was the understanding that I got that the community had mixed responses to it, specifically those who were Hispanic or children of immigrants, because she said that a lot of them felt like they were currently safe, or they had no former harms from the current situation, and they felt by that might be breaching the relationship that they already have with the police, and that they already have this understanding that they're not going to act on it. And so they felt like that would be poking the bear almost when they feel like Ogden's the safest place to be for them in Utah. Was that a reaction that you felt played into your decision, or how did that influence anything?
Yeah, let's attack let's just talk about that concern. And I think the concern was, as way I understood it, was less with them breaching the trust with Ogden City Police Department. and more with a resolution, but more of they felt like if we had a resolution, it might draw attention from the federal government, and that could put a target on our back, so to speak. I haven't seen any evidence of that, right? I mean, New Mexico passed an entire statewide resolution. We've seen Denver's mayor come out super strong. We saw Salt Lake City's mayor come out super strong against ICE. We didn't have these ICE invasion overnight there. And so, I found, I heard that argument a lot. I empathize with that argument a lot, but we also dove deep into our immigrant population and specifically our undocumented population. And we heard from them, keep going, we heard that other argument too. But we also heard the argument of keep going. You're representing us. Thank you. And so we did feel like it was really important to press forward, because when I started looking at the data and looking at where large numbers of what we call at-large arrests were happening. An at-large arrest is an arrest that's not associated with the jail, right? Somebody that doesn't have a criminal conviction, they're just picked up off the street. And those are happening in blue states and red states alike. West Virginia has a high number of these at-large arrests. Louisiana, North Dakota. So by just putting our head down and trying to wish it away, I don't think there's a lot of evidence that that's going to work. And particularly as we know that the federal government has just purchased a $150 million warehouse that is going to house potentially 7,500 detainees. That is more capacity than all of our county jails combined. That is a huge number. And if they get that facility, my fear is that they're going to want to fill it, and that I believe it was the capacity to detain that was really that made us feel safe, because ICE they weren't going to come in here and force if they didn't have a place to put people when they picked them up. And so, that problem for them might be solved, and it might become a big problem for our community.
I appreciate you answering that, because I did find it a little bit peculiar that there wouldn't be like prior research done on what the immigrant communities felt like would be supportive for them. And I think that that's a really important thing to draw awareness to, especially with that development of the new facility, and protecting Ogden preemptively is probably like the ideal decision.
So now that resolution is just kind of done with, because of that blocking the road with the law, what's the next step with dealing with ICE? Because I understand that city council, only has limited power, and it's not your guys' fault, that you can't get certain things done because, it is city council. But what would be the next step with ICE, knowing that this resolution is now finished?
Yeah, because of bad laws on the book that inhibited local our ability to act locally. We did come up with against that, but that's a really good question. And I know Councilmember Lopez has recently put forward an initiative that is going to increase the amount of funding toward a program it's a Path to Citizenship program. Now that program actually it's good. I'm happy it's there. I would like to see more people come through that program so they can get that citizenship. But by definition, it's not actually going to protect someone who is undocumented, because you have to have legal status for 3 to 5 years in order to qualify for that program. So that's not going to help necessarily there. There is another part of that plan that I think could. It's called it's like a preparedness plan, and part of the idea of that is just seeing if we can find ways to help aid folks who might get detained and how we can help them prepare. I don't think we can help them not, but we can help them prepare and get things in order. So whether that's like a power of attorney, whether that's making sure that your loved ones have paperwork filled out so they know your passwords and and everything else like that. So we're trying to find ways to reach into the community that we can help with that. There's a lot of work to be done there before we get that all ironed out and figure out a way to aid in that way. But that is something we're looking to do. And then we're also looking at ways like, how do we put more teeth into making it more public and transparent in lease agreements? If DHS did want to have a lease agreement with the city, whether that's at the airport or somewhere else, how could we make sure that's a public and transparent process? That's something we're also looking into to make sure that, the public would have an opportunity to object before something like that got signed.
Yeah. And that last part's great, because we've seen that a lot of how they're going about their processes are, shady and inhumane, and, having that in the public eye is very, very important.
I think so too.
So now this next one, more so about affordability. Since Trump launched his war on Iran, gas prices have gone through the roof. It took me, I don't know about y'all, it took me $7 more to fill my tank than it usually does. As well as rising costs otherwise, as well as taxes, utility bills. What do you think that the city government can realistically do to make Ogden more affordable?
Wow, this is a great question. This is really the question that's top of mind for everyone is about affordability. And I think there are a few levers that we can pull when it comes to affordability. And most importantly is to make sure that we're keeping our public spaces public, that we're making sure that we have access to things that we can go out and enjoy life without having to spend a lot of money, right? So whether that's trying to wrestle back good ski lake, so that on a Saturday or Sunday morning, we could go spend time there with your friends on a paddleboard and enjoy the water and not have to go, to Pineview Dam and pay an entry fee or everything like that. Those are some small things that we can do. And then we're looking at everything when it comes to the budget process and how we're allocating that money and how we can just make sure that we're doing the best we can with the resources we can to serve the public. It's definitely a tough one that we're thinking about strongly as we come through the budget cycle.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think you did this last time on the podcast. You always come back to just tangible things we can do that might not, some people might think of that and be like, oh, it doesn't really matter that much, but it really does add up. And when you think about collectively how much people spend on recreation and going out and doing all that kind of thing, I think it really does make a difference. And if you can make a change, you should, just like how, some people downplayed some things that the Biden administration did as far as airline fees and stuff like that, or junk fees.
Junk fees, yeah.
It's like those things are important because those things add up, and that all contributes to affordability. I don't know. Did you have another question?
I was just going to say it's also helping like the entire state because you're reducing carbon emissions significantly if people aren't having to travel like long distances to go do things that are very Utah, like boating.
Yeah.
Like being out in the water in general, like, I don't know. I feel like everyone I know drives there at least once a month. And I just think about how good it would be for the environment too.
Yeah. The only other places you can go, you got to go to Manawa, or you got to go to Causey. Which is it's beautiful up there, right? It's beautiful up there. You got to go to Pineview Dam, or you got that place out on Willard Bay. It's like kind of gross out there, but it's packed all the time. That pond on 21st Street is beautiful and could be utilized for a lot of people. But I like that point. Thank you for bringing that up.
So I'm gonna switch things up just a little bit. What is one process or institution in the city that is underfunded? And then what is another that is overfunded in your opinion?
We have not gotten into the line items of the budget just yet because I haven't even had my first budget presentation from the administration. That's coming. It's on the calendar. I believe it's the second or third week in May, somewhere in that range. As I start seeing that come in, and we start really, I want to get together. I want to get our community together. And do something that really hasn't been done in Ogden recently, where we let's dive in to this budget, right? And let's take our role with the budget seriously, because that right there is a really good question. I've had concerns with things like, for example, the Quality Neighborhoods Initiative that takes $1 million a year and puts it into basically raising property values, right? It takes, and don't get me wrong, I live in a Quality Neighborhoods home, right? Where they demolished the D Elementary and they rebuilt all these houses, right? In 2018, I think you could make the argument still, I think forward-thinking people might have been against this at that time, but I think you could make the argument at that time that, hey, we still needed to be putting money into these neighborhoods to help people want to move here and want to grow these neighborhoods. But now people are coming in from all over wanting to purchase the homes in Ogden. I don't think we necessarily need to be spending $1 million a year to be increasing the property values in our neighborhoods. I think that could be better used in other ways. So that's an example right there. I'm trying to think of something that's underfunded that we could get to, but I might have to take a rain check on that question.
Yeah,
Thank you. That was a good one. I love that.
Yeah, so my next question is something I just thought of, which is, so as a city council member, a lot of what you do, as was found out by the ICE proposal having to be dropped, a lot of it is affected by state law, state politicians and stuff like that. Are you interested at all in either campaigning for, members for the state house or the state senate and to try to actually change that so that then they can actually have a good working relationship with you, not working against you or pushing all these bills that harm immigrants and harm trans people or harm all these different communities? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yes. Yes. I mean, this is such an important year, right? We've heard about a blue wave that might be coming, and we've seen all these special elections go the way of Democrats across the country. I feel the momentum. I feel it coming here. And I really think that we have a lot of great candidates that we could possibly flip some districts and maybe even a Senate seat here or there that previously I would have just told you. I'm a realist when it comes to these things. I'm the kind of guy that looks at the data and is like, that can't be flippable. Why do we even put money in there? But I think that's different this year. And I think if we get good candidates and good messaging, that we can reach people. One of the things that I think that I saw attack ads against Rosemary Lesser in her last run. One of them was they had this big pile of money on the table and they were attacking Rosemary for going against the income tax cuts. Well, let's talk about those cuts for just a minute, right? Over the past 5 years, there's been $1.4 billion in tax cuts the income tax is earmarked for education. That's $1.4 billion that has come out of our education budget, out of our children's futures. And if you're in the bottom 20% of income, do you know how much money you get back per month? It's $8. If you're in the top 1%, like Speaker of the House, Mike Schultz, do you know how much the top 1% gets back? $1,600 a month, right? And just think about that. These tax cuts, no wonder why they keep doing them. It keeps helping them and their rich friends. This is a classic example where they are stealing from our children. They're stealing from our teachers. They're stealing from our school counselors, and they're giving it to their rich friends. Right? We can no longer allow these policies to take place. And then take it one step further. Guess what happens when local school districts get starved of money from the state? What do they have to do?
Budget cuts.
Budget cuts, or the school district themselves has to raise property taxes, right? And then that might get passed down from the property owner to renters. And so your $8 a month just disappeared, right? So you didn't even get your $8 a month. Right? And which neighborhoods do those affect more?
Low income.
Low income neighborhoods, right? Because if you live in Park City, you have $9 million worth of property value per student. If you live in Ogden, you have about $230,000 to $300,000 of property value per student. If you want to make your schools have more money in Park City, you make a tiny fraction of a property tax increase, and you got a bunch of big bucket of money coming in front of you. So these policies that happen at the state, they really hurt us here in Ogden, right? And so we've got to make that case. We got to get ahead of the case of, oh, well, income tax cuts are good. Tax cuts are good. There's going to be money in my pocket. Well, do the math. See who it's hurting and if you are even getting that money back. And if we get ahead of that and we get those messages out, I really believe we can win.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And something I just wanted to ask, related to that is you have, your power and your duties as a city council member, but then you also have the bully pulpit because you are an American politician. You're not a lot of people can say that they're a city council member, especially from, blue collar town like Ogden or, things like that. What can you say about that? How are you going to use your voice, and what do you think can be said about that?
I love this question because for a long time I've had a lot of frustration with council members who or any local politician who won't use their voice because you have your vote, but you also have your voice, and that has always been point of mine is that I'm going to use my voice and to help create change, because I do still have a bit of a platform, that as I ran, and I've really tried to keep my social media alive and well and healthy, so that when there is if I can help put some effort behind a candidate, I can do that. If I want to help put my effort behind disrupting a bad bill, we can do that. If I want to put my efforts, and so I do and will continue to use my voice, and I think you'll see that if anyone's tuning into council meetings, you'll already see me trying to do that there. I know that's a small audience, and that's why I'm trying to take that every week and broaden that out to social media. We're even looking to expand that. I've talked to people who are not on social media. More and more young people are ditching social media. Good for you. Keep doing it. And
just watch the WSU Democrats podcast.
Oh yeah, except that. Well, no, that's actually a thing. Was I've said maybe because some of those people that have ditched their social media are still on YouTube, and so I'm going to start taking those videos, putting them on YouTube, and then and figuring out ways to still reach people who have decided to cut the cord with nows.
Awesome. Totally forgot what I was about to. Do you have another question?
Yeah. So if you could tackle one specific problem in Ogden with no budget limit, what would be number one on that list?
I think it would be, if no budget limit existed, it would be housing, right? Yeah. Whether that's rental assistance, whether that's down payment assistance, it would be housing for sure. Yeah. Figuring out how to get people safely housed is just a huge priority, whether it comes from homelessness or it just being the biggest part of our budgets that allows us to makes life more difficult if you're not in a stably housed position where you can. You don't have that income to go to the things that you want to do and to live a good quality life. So that would be it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you guys are so, passionate about the housing, because I'm from Oregon, and specifically in West Salem, the rent is absolutely atrocious. It's so much worse than here. And I'm looking for housing next year, and I'm happy to see those prices, honestly, like compared to what I'm used to. It's very low. So from my perspective, it's more about, keeping it low, whereas you guys is, kind of fighting to, I guess the same thing. But yeah, I'm glad to see that you guys are fighting so hard to keep it low, even from someone like me who, in comparison to the high rent, it's not that bad, but, keeping it from getting to that point is very important.
Yeah. And, this is something I, tried to talk about on the campaign trail a little bit. Was there's a lot of demonization of rentals and apartments, and the community. We did have a lot of building fast, and people felt that and felt a certain way about it. But I did try to talk about what that did for the rental market. It stopped it from inflating. It didn't necessarily bring prices down, but it stopped it from inflating, because we had at the peak there was over 10% vacancy rate in those. And so, when there's over 10% vacancy, property owners, they're not going to be hiking the rent. Right. And then what it also did was it gave renters more leverage in negotiation on those leases. Yeah. They got to have better terms. Sometimes 1 month's free, sometimes shorter leases, different things like that actually really did impact renters in a positive way. So I think it's important that we as a lot of our community feels a certain way about what has happened in Ogden and a lot of building and growth. But we need to talk about the good that's done for folks who are living there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only have 2 minutes left. I just wanted to get your take real quick. I know this is way out of your purview, but do you have any opinions on the war in Iran? That has recently started?
The chosen terrible war that has, that people are dying in, that we are spending $1 billion a day when we say we don't have enough money for healthcare, for housing. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's preposterous. I think that it is, we're all already feeling it. Yep. At the gas pump. We're going to be feeling it in our food prices, because all of those things, unfortunately, come in on trucks. And so it's going to cause, the longer it goes on, and it doesn't look like there's a short off ramp here. And I think it was a huge mistake. But but we've in Trump's first term, we got lucky that he didn't stumble ass backwards into something like this. And I think we all had hoped we'd get through this one too. And it's really scary right now. I mean, I think back to what happened, how I felt after Uvalde, right? We had, how many kids died in Uvalde in that shooting there?
Oh, like 13, 14, 15.
13 or something, something in that range, right? And how I felt, I think there was a fourth grade class. I had a fourth grade student or son at that time. And I cried the next day when I dropped him off at school. And then I think about what a community must feel when a neighboring country bombs a school and kills 100 school kids, and what that community must feel like, and it's no wonder that they, we think they're not going to be radicalized by that. We have created a problem and opened a box that I don't know that's going to be solved anytime soon. And I'm really worried about it, frankly.
Does anyone have any finishing questions before we go? I have one St. Patrick's Day related question if we're ready to be ridiculous. Okay, so other than housing, if Ogden found a pot of gold tomorrow, what's the first thing you think the city should invest in?
Other than housing, you already got my good one. Let's see. It should invest in its parks infrastructure, right? Like, I mean, we go to our neighbors and they just have, whether it's an outdoor beautiful swimming pool or whether it's like an adventure park that the community gathers at. And it's not so much the tool that's there; it's that the community comes together, and that community is really important. And it goes back to the affordability thing that if we could invest in infrastructure like that, if Ogden should be able to have nice things, and I want to see Ogden have nice things that community goes to and gathers, and I think it would really just boost our overall feeling of a community here in Ogden.
Awesome. Well, that's it, Councilmember Lundell. Awesome.
You can call me Kevin any day.
Hey, we got to be, it's more prestigious. I always go by Mr. President. So, yeah.
All right, Mr. President.
And she does too.
No, I don't.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it every time I get to come chat with y'all.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Have you on again soon. All right, see you later, everyone.